Welcome to Bible for Modern Minds podcast.
Today, we're doing a really structured investigation into one of the most foundational figures in all of history. We've pulled together a powerful rhetorical address, a whole set of sources, really all centered on the identity and, well, the claims of Jesus Christ.
And our mission today is very analytical. We're not just, summarizing theological points. We're actually trying to dissect the logical framework. We want to understand why this speaker argues for this single critical hour of decision.
Right, and why they claim he is the specific answer to the deepest needs of every life.
Exactly.
That's the core question we're going to unpack. How does this source actually build its case for the, inescapable nature of this choice? We'll be hitting on themes of urgency, a really staggering definition of love, and then that ultimate question of identity.
It's a compelling argument. Let's see how it begins.
Okay, so it starts with urgency. The address immediately says that this present moment, right now, might just be the most important moment of your life.
An actual hour of decision.
Exactly, and an hour of decision. It all hinges on this idea that, even today, almost every single person is searching for something. A deep sense of fulfillment that often gets misplaced.
And it connects that search to things we see every day. The source actually mentions people trying to fill that spiritual void by looking for, and I'm quoting, another marital experience or drugs.
Just chasing these temporary fixes.
Right, because they haven't identified what they truly lack. And then the claim from Jesus, according to the source, is just so definitive. It's singular. I am the truth.
So he's not just a truth teller, he's the embodiment of it, the thing that meets those deepest needs.
That's the claim.
So if this is a decision you can't escape, what happens if you hear it, you understand it, and then you reject it? What are the consequences there?
Well, the source is really serious about this. It states that once the gospel is heard and then rejected, you're never really the same again. It sets up this kind of irreversible internal conflict.
And they give an example to back that up.
They do. They bring up the famous story of the rich young ruler.
Okay, so for anyone who might not know that story, what was the context? What was he asked to do?
It's a perfect illustration of the cost of denial. So this ruler asks about eternal life, but when Jesus tells him to give up his possessions, the one thing he valued most, and to follow him,
He couldn't do it.
he couldn't. The source says he turned away, grieved, emotionally disturbed. And the analysis is that this rejection, it wasn't casual. It forced a crisis. He had to confront that his wealth meant more to him than this claimed truth, and that confrontation just, it shattered him.
That definitely sets a dramatic tone. So from that urgency, the argument shifts pretty dramatically. It moves to define the character of this figure through the lens of love, but on a cosmic scale.
It does. It frames the whole biblical narrative not as a rule book, but as a love story.
God's love affair with the human race.
Exactly. And what really stood out to me was the scale. We're asked to imagine a creator with, billions of planets and hundreds of billions of stars. And yet the universe itself apparently stands in awe at the love that's focused right here on Earth.
And the reason for that focus is what makes it so powerful, right? The source claims Earth is the only planet known to be in rebellion against God.
And that's the anomaly. If you have all of creation, why pour your most intense affection into the one place that's actively defying you?
And that love toward rebellion is how the source defines divine love.
And then it moves right to the cross as the concrete proof of that love. Philosophically, it demands this new definition. Love isn't just a feeling, it's doing. Love is a verb.
God proved his love by giving his son.
By acting. By reconciling that broken relationship.
The source material is, it's brutally specific about the physicality of that act. It doesn't use soft language at all.
No, it calls the cross the most cruel death in the whole world. And that's essential to the argument because it defines the cost. It talks about nails, spikes, mutilated bodies, and even the practice of breaking the legs to speed up death.
That level of suffering is meant to show the cost of reconciliation.
It is. And to try and make that relatable, the source uses a modern story. A father who gave a kidney to his daughter and then died during the procedure.
A huge human sacrifice. How does the speaker contrast that with the crucifixion?
Well, that human story shows this incredible sacrificial love, but the source argues that Jesus laying down his own life is different because it's presented as the only solution, which leads to this absolute statement.
That there's no other way to heaven.
Or to find, as they put it, life with a capital L. because if God could have found a less costly way, he would have found it. The brutality of the cross, in this logic, proves its necessity.
Okay, so the stage is set. Urgent decision, overwhelming sacrificial love. Now, the unavoidable question of identity. 2,000 years later, he only lived 33 years, never went more than 100 miles from home, no formal schooling. How is he still the most talked about person in history?
The source calls him the sign. It uses these Old Testament analogies to show his superior status. The people of Jonah's day repented when Jonah preached, right?
And the Queen of the South recognized Solomon's wisdom.
Exactly. But the speaker argues that Jesus is a wisdom greater than Solomon, a prophet greater than Jonah, and yet the people of his own time were blind and deaf to it.
So how did his contemporaries react? What were the labels they were using?
It was completely polarized. The religious establishment, the scribes and Pharisees, they reacted with just total hostility. They saw him as a threat to their authority.
Others didn't.
Others were humbled, like the people of Nineveh mentioned earlier, and the labels thrown at him were vicious. Madman, a maniac.
You know, I find the distinction the source makes between a political and a spiritual revolution really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. The source is insistent. He was revolutionary, but not against Rome. He didn't lead some kind of political coup.
His revolution was personal.
It was personal. He changed people's lives from the inside out.
Yeah.
And he navigated that political tension so well by making that clear distinction. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. He was a revolutionary of the spirit, not the state.
And what about his physical appearance? The source mentioned something pretty specific about that.
It does. It reminds us that all those common images we see, the paintings and statues, they're just artists' ideas. We have no idea what he actually looked like.
And the source claims that was on purpose.
It posits that God did this intentionally so that we wouldn't end up worshiping an image. It reinforces the idea that God is a spirit and worship should be spiritual, not, visual. Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the central paradox of the whole argument.
Yeah.
This claim of complete humanity alongside these radical claims of divinity. The sources are so clear that he was completely human.
He was. He shared every common human experience. He was numbered with transgressors. He got hungry, thirsty, tired. He knew the joy of friendship, and he wept at the tomb of a loved one. He was fully relatable, completely grounded in the human condition.
And yet that full humanity is immediately contradicted by the core claim about his character.
That's the contradiction you have to wrestle with. Despite being completely human, he never committed a sin. The source points out that he openly challenged his neighbors to name a single transgression, and they couldn't.
Tempted in every way, but overcame them all.
Which is presented as an impossibility for a mere man.
And this is where the divine claims really come in. Where does the source find the evidence for that?
In his own words, he claimed pre-existence. In the beginning was the Word. That implies he existed before time itself began. But the ultimate statement...
Before Abraham was, I am.
That's the one. And his opponents knew exactly what he was claiming. He wasn't just saying he existed before Abraham. The phrase, I am, is understood by the source as him claiming the eternal existence of God himself.
So the distinction is crucial then. The difference between his physical birth and his actual origin.
Exactly. And Peter's famous confession, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God, which Jesus says was revealed to him by God, that just cements the whole argument. The incarnation, his birth, was the beginning of his flesh, but it was not his origin.
So if he is who he claimed to be, the proof has to be in his actions, in his authority. The source points to 4 areas where he showed absolute authority. Let's start with the one that set him apart from any prophet before him.
Forgiveness. He forgave sin. The source stresses that no prophet ever did that. Prophets could tell you how to get forgiveness from God, but only God can grant it directly.
So by saying your sins are forgiven, he's putting himself on a divine level.
Immediately. He's claiming an authority no mortal could have.
Okay, second area. His authority over nature, the physical laws of reality.
Yeah, the classic example is calming the storm. The source uses this to show that the wind, the sea, they all obeyed his spoken command. And it connects this to a modern story about an airline captain flying through a typhoon.
What's the point of that analogy?
Well, the source describes this captain after the plane gets through the turbulence, turning to the passengers and basically saying, that was the Creator telling us there's something up here more powerful than this airplane.
So Jesus, by commanding nature, shows he's the one who made nature's laws.
That's the point. And the last 2 areas of authority are over disease and death and then spiritual warfare.
Right. He made the blind see, the deaf hear, raised the dead.
And he confronted and cast out demons, restoring people's minds. So you have this comprehensive authority over mind, body, nature, and spirit, and the source uses that as the ultimate proof of his identity.
But beyond just controlling the physical world, the source argues Jesus also raised the ethical standard for humanity, made morality an internal thing.
This is a really crucial shift. Under the Old Covenant, Moses gave outward laws, right? Do not commit adultery, do not murder.
But Jesus said God judges the inward thoughts and intents of the heart.
Exactly. The source gives specific examples. Moses said, don't commit adultery. But Jesus taught that if you even look at a woman with lust, you're already guilty in your heart.
And the same with murder and hate.
Yes. Moses said, don't murder, but Jesus said, hating your brother makes you guilty. It raises the moral bar to a level of complete internal purity, a standard no one could possibly meet on their own.
Which brings us right back to the crucifixion. We have to talk about the suffering detailed in the source.
The suffering confirms the extent of the love we talked about earlier. The source specifies the implements. The leather thongs with steel pellets, the mocking, the crown of thorns. It is an image of profound, intentional suffering.
And it mentions that angels were ready to intervene.
72,000 of them, ready to draw their swords. But Jesus refused rescue, saying, to this end was I born. He had to see it through.
Looking at it from a global perspective, the source makes a really powerful point about the universality of this moment.
It's such a necessary correction. It specifically points out that the man who helped carry the cross, Simon of Cyrene, was a black man.
And the speaker uses that to say what?
To emphatically state that Jesus belongs to Africa as much as he does to Europe and Asia. That this can never be reduced to a white man's religion or a black man's religion. It's a world religion.
And what's the ultimate meaning of his final words from the cross? It's finished.
The source interprets that as the final declaration that God's plan of salvation was done, complete, fully effective for the forgiveness of all sins. And it makes it intensely personal, claiming Jesus had the capacity on the cross to think of you as if you were the only person in the universe.
And that sacrifice is validated by, well, by the greatest news of all.
The ultimate proof that the plan worked, the resurrection. He is not here, he is risen. And that belief, the source says, is what took these scattered, terrified disciples and gave them the conviction to turn the world upside down.
It transforms the entire story from tragedy to triumph.
Absolutely. And all of this, the identity claims, the authority, the resurrection, it leaves you, the listener, with a choice. An inescapable, logical choice. The source says there are only 3 alternatives.
The famous trilemma: liar, lunatic, or Lord. Let's break down how the source uses logic to sort of corner the listener.
Okay, so if he claimed to be God, but he wasn't, he has to be one of 2 things. Alternative 1, he's a liar. A deliberate fraud and a hoax, the biggest fraud in all of human history.
It's a huge claim to make. And alternative 2.
The lunatic. If he genuinely believed he was the Son of God but was just mistaken, then he was mad, utterly deluded. He needed several psychiatrists.
So by eliminating those 2 options, the intentional liar or the delusional madman, the source says you're left with only one conclusion.
That he was who he claimed to be, God in the flesh. The choice is inescapable because his claims were so absolute. There's no middle ground. You can't just say he was a good moral teacher. Good moral teachers don't claim to be the living embodiment of truth.
Now, the source admits you can't prove this scientifically. You can't put divinity in a test tube. So if that kind of proof is off the table, what validates the belief?
The speaker defines proof in 2 ways. First, the lives that he transforms. The change in people's character and behavior, that's the living evidence. And second, it's that inner conviction. They move beyond intellectual agreement to a personal declaration. I don't say I think, I hope, I say I know.
That's a critical point.
Ha.
How do we justify making that kind of decision in our daily lives?
The source connects it directly to everyday faith, which is something we all use. You're acting on faith all the time. You trust the bank will honor your check. You trust the chair you're sitting in will hold you up.
You trust your spouse didn't poison your coffee.
Or that oncoming drivers will stay on their side of the road.
Yeah.
We manage our entire life on levels of trust that aren't scientifically provable in the moment.
That's a really good point.
Precisely. So the challenge from the speaker is to take that same faith and focus it on Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And the final call to action is to publicly confirm that decision by asking, what you want me to do, Lord?
So we've synthesized this really rigorous, structured argument. the inescapable urgency, the cosmic depth of love, the detailed evidence of authority, and the logical necessity of deciding. It's a very demanding case.
It is. And the source ends with a final, pretty sobering thought for you, the listener. It suggests that choosing Christ might actually make your life harder in the short term, that the world will turn against you, and it might be easier to just reject him.
But only if you don't want the joy and the peace and the security that comes from trusting him.
Exactly. The cost is real, but the payoff is absolute.
You know, I think the most fascinating meta-observation from all this source material is this. If you look at our society, our greatest historians, our philosophers, poems, plays, even our architecture, it's all just saturated with images and stories about Jesus. Given how often humanity tries to ignore him, what does it say about us that we keep trying to run from someone who, as the source says, keeps popping up everywhere? It's a question of why we continue to argue with the historical fact that defines so much of our culture. Something to mull over as you continue your own deep dive.